Started. This is the November 12th study session with the, we're getting started. Thank you. So this is our November 12th study session. We've got a couple of agenda items. One we'll get started with is the LIFT discussion, Littleton Invest for Tomorrow. Of course, this is the urban renewal. Our urban renewal group. And I was gonna say urban renewal area, but it's not the area. Our urban renewal authority. And so we met with them a few weeks back, and we had actually, just to recount, we had met with them in the spring and asked them to bring back a plan or some sort of proposal that we could consider so that as there is a loan amount due or there's some level of payment or else forgiveness of payment due in December of this year. And that would help council to make a decision as to where we were headed with that. So they came in and they had a presentation of some of their work and their plans and some of the work that they were doing. And so Mark and I kind of hashed through what we felt were some of the most viable options for council. Now, literally, we could probably sit here and massage these and rewrite these all night long. So what we're really looking for is consensus from council on, first off, which option we want to have a conversation about, and then so that would, we've got one that would be, we're kind of calling the nuclear option, which is to eliminate the other one would be kind of a status quo, and then the other two options are versions of LIFT continuing to operate. Essentially, one is with Columbine and one is without Columbine. So, and then we added a kind of a amended option of the with Columbine in the event that Columbine doesn't have a response for us, and then what would have, how that would flow out from there. So Mark's gonna kind of run through the presentation, and then I wanna get a feel from council if you wanna have a conversation about either, I would say, option A, A1, or B. And then we can talk about that. But if council has no interest in moving forward with this, then we would need to know that. Whatever council would like to do will show up on our meeting next Tuesday. And either way, we have to make a decision about the money next Tuesday. And because that has to be taken care of in December, and Reed can give us the legalities of that. And then we would do a resolution based on what we wanted to do in terms of the other options. So I'll let Mark kind of run through what those are and.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Apologize, I've probably got another cold and a cough, so try to move through this. Okay, so the mayor covered most of this here, but just quickly, so we're gonna talk about the continuation of the mission of LIFT, trying to decide that. If, assuming that the council wishes the mission to continue, then we're gonna talk a little bit about the loan itself. And then also in the staff communication, I highlighted that we have 3 dissolved URAs that we need to discuss. The existing sales tax increment revenue, it still sits with LIFT. We'll touch on that in a minute. So just as quick background, 2016, 3 of the 4 URAs were repealed. The property tax was returned from those 3, but again, the sales tax from those 3, the sales tax increment was retained by LIFT. October 22nd, the LIFT board was before council. As the mayor said, kind of shared a proposed work plan. Then the other piece here is December 16th, the loan is due. So if extended, it will require council action to do that before that date. Okay, so in the staff communication, I listed a series of questions that the council may want to consider here for this evening. I've just kind of put together what I call the core questions. Should the mission of LIFT continue? If yes, should any of the loan be paid back? Should the sales tax increment from the 3 past URAs be returned? Any requirements if LIFT is to continue? Staff did suggest a couple of things that the council may want to consider. Be happy to talk about that. An executive director is kind of one example. And then, of course, how might the city coordinate with Lyft over time here? So as the mayor talked about, we got staff communication has these 4 options. The option A1 that I sent out to council here is a little bit of a hybrid between A and B, but in essence, just as the mayor said, is it's kind of more like A. We kind of send notice to Columbine Square. If they don't act within the time frame, then Lyft would continue with their other planning effort to look at other public projects here. And so it's probably, in my opinion, probably a more practical approach if the council wishes for Lyft to continue. And I think that's, I have a map here, I think is the next slide. Yeah, and I pulled this off the webpage of Lyft, but it's not quite correct because there's a piece that's been pulled out of that. And that is the, what's the global
Oh,
piece there.
that business,
Yeah,
what's the name?
Global Communications, is that the
No.
name?
Globus Travel.
Globus Travel.
Travel, all
Where
right.
where is that? Here is that, it's on Irving.
Here, let me put it down.
Yeah,
Maybe down at the bottom of the yellow.
yeah,
Yeah.
not quite a lot of
This is
that.
Global.
Right.
So I noticed that here this afternoon. Okay, so with that, I'm gonna turn it back over to the mayor and see where the council may wanna take this.
Okay, so I think we'll kind of start from the bottom, I think would be the best way, and start with what we have as option D. Option D would be a full return of all the Lyft funds and disbanding Lyft, which would ultimately be done by ordinance and therein a repeal of the Columbine Urban Renewal Area. So, and I get kind of a idea from council, if there's a majority of council that's interested in that, then that's what we'll take back. So Peggy?
So we would do away with Lyft?
Mhm.
Yes.
I could support that, considering they haven't really come up with anything substantial to put this money towards. And some of the things I've talked to the Lyft group about was, I thought you gave very specific instructions at the meeting, and the museum was, I think we need I thought they were supposed to give us a list of projects. And they came back with Columbine Square. Well, as much as I want Columbine Square to get developed, the reality is we're begging Columbine Square to come out and do something with us when they don't really need the money. And so my thought would be, I would support D, but I'm okay with some of these other options too. If we feel like if they can put a plan together and move forward. I don't want just to keep going on though. I don't think it should be another year or two, and I don't think an executive director is the right way to go, but we'll talk about that.
D is not my preferred choice.
Jerry?
First half of D would be my choice. We need to get paid back, period. All of our money according to the agreement. The city has lived up to their agreement. Unfortunately, Lyft has not. Lyft still owes us money from when they were Riverfront. So the idea of extending this thing out and letting money possibly go away when the city needs money concerns me. If there's a way to keep it around Lyft, I'm willing to consider that. But number one is we need payback.
Carol?
Yes for D.
Karina?
No for D. I think there are opportunities that we can still take forward and take advantage of. So I would say no for D.
Okay, and I'm a no for D. So Jerry's kind of,
I'll go to D. I'll go full D then, if that's the case.
And I like what Jerry said there. I mean, if we're gonna continue on, then let's get square with them. Let's get back to.
well, I think we have to,
Yep.
what you guys just did was you
Right.
just said that
Yep.
you want D. And if if there's 4 people in this room that want D, and that goes to our agenda on the 19th, we are not gonna flush out any of the other options if
Right.
you are not interested in talking about those. I mean, Pat, you indicated you You might a little bit, Jerry, you had a little. So I need a pretty full commitment, because if this goes,
But
Well,
let's
let's
start
talk
at A.
about some of
Let's
the
start
other
at A, I
ones
didn't
then.
like starting at D.
Yeah,
well,
Well,
that's
makes
why
more
we're
sense.
starting there, because if there is a solid 4 that have no interest in this, and I didn't get a full solid from you
Right,
or from Jerry,
right, I agree.
so, okay. So let's look at then option C, which, cause I wanna eliminate these.
Right.
So option C would be status quo. Anybody interested in status quo?
I don't
No,
know.
I didn't think so. Okay, so let's jump then to the top, which is gonna jump around. Option A.
okay, is there logic
So
here?
we'll go to A, yeah, because I think they're kind of inside out. So option A is the option where Columbine Square, well, let's start with this. All of these options, A and B, and A1, are hiring a executive director. And we can talk about what that looks like, and Lyft has been very clear that that's something that's very important to them. And I think one of the things we heard when they talked to us was that they don't feel like they have the expertise to be able to execute against what they're being asked to do. The other reality there, and Mark and I've had a number of conversations about what is the capacity of staff to step in and do the type of work that an executive director would do. It's really not staff's job to do that. It's Lyft's job to make sure that they are staffed up in the areas where they need the help. It's very specialized and specific. Staff is here to support as needed. So all of them would require the executive director. Option A would be a payback of a portion, staff's recommending $50,000, and that's out of the primary balance. That would leave a balance of 104 plus. The return of the sales tax increment from the 3 repealed URA is $134,998. That is a recommendation from our city attorney that he's included in all of these, and he feels very seriously that that is a mandate, that is something that really needs to be done, and we're not entirely sure why it wasn't done before. We kind of tracked back through history, and Reed, do you wanna kind of give a little bit of background on that?
Yeah, I would just say, looking into when those 3 other renewal plans were repealed, I think the intent and the atmosphere around that time was the thought that the TIF that had been remitted would be, well, that had been given overhead would be sent back to the city. So I think that was the intent of council at the time. There was nothing within the actual repealing ordinance that required that, so we allowed your renewal Lyft to continue to keep those funds.
And that's I'm gonna round it to 135,000, so when we're showing the numbers on these, it is all of the numbers will show that as a minus on that. Okay, so, yeah.
Tiff, what is the total sales increment that Littleton, what did I say?
No, you saw Tiff.
I caught that too.
Regarding TIF, what is the total amount that is due Littleton, the total amount
For all URAs or just,
due the city of Littleton?
so the 3 URAs would be the 135,000 roughly. They are actually authorized to retain a portion of the Columbine because they have, the following quarter, the quarter of the following year. So there could be a potential maybe, I don't think I have it broken out by year.
And where does that 134 go? So when you
What-
say, where does that go?
To the
Like
general fund.
To the
Okay.
general fund, yes.
But what is Littleton owed?
So they,
The loan to Littleton, is that what you're asking?
Yeah, but right now, what is the total loan right now?
The
The
total
total loan I know is due December 19th.
right, it's 154,000 roughly.
So we're owed what, everything but 50,000, should have been paid back, everything but 50,000 at this point?
No, not but 50,000, no, the loan, the 154 is what is due on December 16th, that's the loan back to the city according to the.
And how much of that is delinquent?
Well,
150,000.
None of it really, because it's not due until December 16th.
Oh,
But we haven't ever paid it back. They've never,
They have not made any
so that
payments
part of
towards
that
it.
is delinquent, so.
Not necessarily, because the loan says it comes full due on December 16th.
According to the agreement, they should have been paying us back, and we have not received it.
There is a provision that says annual payments or at the end of December 16th.
Did they pay us back anything
did not.
December of 2019? Did they pay us back anything 2018?
No.
2017?
No.
2016? So they're delinquent.
Well, Councilmember Valdez, I'll point to the section within the loan, the cooperation and loan agreement, which said repayment shall be made by Lyft to the city annually before December 31st of each year or by mutual agreement, but final payment to the city shall be made on or before December 16th, 2019. So very technically speaking, they weren't required to repay it until
I guess I just don't know where it was we ever said that they didn't have to pay us year after year after year. We haven't been given that information. So, but anyway, that's about 150 or whatever the number is, that's.
we lent them $150,000 and it's about $154,000 back because there's interest on that and that's the 4,000.
So even if come to December 19th, when they pay us back, should that be the case? They still have debt, is that correct?
no.
So they'll be, that's the only debt they have right now.
The
is
only
that.
debt they have is the loan to the city. The only thing that allows them to keep TIF right now is because they have debt. If they have no debt, they can't keep the TIF.
And what about the debt from when they were Riverfront? Because it was just Riverfront just continued on into Lyft.
There was no debt in Riverfront.
They never, there definitely there was.
There was, but according to the loan documents, it was forgiven. I can't remember the terms exactly, but there was no debt after 2008.
Right, so they did owe us money, then they were unable to pay us back for whatever reason, and then.
It was forgiven.
This is not the Riverfront URA.
Right,
This is a
but
completely different
I'm
one.
concerned about a pattern here, and it's not the board's fault, it's not the board's fault, it's, that's clear. I'm just concerned that, I would need information such as what are their attorney fees right now? What do we anticipate their attorney fees to be for the coming year? Executive director, if there was to be an executive director, because there will be, assuming they still stay in existence, there still will be tax increment that they're receiving.
Right, they're receiving, if they continue, they will receive sales tax increment from the city, and they'll also receive property tax increment if there were any.
How much is that per year?
Exactly.
The sales tax for 2020 is estimated at 108,000.
In property tax?
In 2020, there is no increment in property tax in that area.
So they have a stream of money that can, the risk of default to our loan is low at this point. If they're getting $100,000 a year, they have this still as a liability on their books, they know what they need to manage to.
Peggy?
So what have we actually got through this? Yeah, what exists any place in the city because we have this project?
There's no project.
There's no project.
Well, I mean, the plan is what I'm meaning.
Because
we have-
There's
we have lived.
We have this, the idea is
They haven't.
to bring in something
Well, this is where we go back though. This is why we met with them in the spring and we said, you've got to do something. Something's got to move here. And then they came back to us this fall and they said, well, this is what we'd like to do. And they showed us some of the things that they're interested in doing and that's why we're here to then give back to them. This is what council would like to see you do. Can we run through these real quick? Okay. So, and then we can get into the numbers and stuff on these. So it would be return of the sales tax increment, as I said, that's standard across all of them, it's $135,000, it comes back to the city, it goes into the general fund. Lyft would hire an executive director within 60 days of the city formally modifying the loan. We're putting timelines in here because it just doesn't need to keep dragging on. Lyft then has 45 days to get a written commitment from the owners of Columbine Square. to use urban renewal. And this includes a commitment for them to start the process within 90 days. Basically, that's saying, if you are really interested in using urban renewal on Columbine Square owners, then you need to commit because we cannot continue to wait for you. Then Lyft would develop and present to council a plan for approval within 6 months. 6 months is different on this one than it is from B, because the 6 months is there because of the time waiting for Columbine to bring back their answer. So 6 months from the time that they get we're assuming a go-ahead from Columbine on this, then there needs to be a plan for using the urban renewal, which includes projects, as many project details as possible. What's the budget? What's the financing, bonding information, and neighborhood input? That can be, that can be a list that can be made even more robust. Then upon council approval, they execute the plan no later, and by execute the plan needs to begin, the plan that we're asking them to present to council in paragraph number 5, that plan would need to kick off on November 1st, 2020. And then you see the cash available, $427,739 refund. Then if we ask for the $50,000, then they would have a revised cash balance of almost $242,700. So $700,000.
Something like that.
$700. So, yeah. And then the rest is kind of the legalities of the loan, interest, and all of that stuff kind of wrapped up. So let's go to option A1, because the variation from that is simply, and you guys got an email from Mark, and in the red, the variation on that is that Lyft, everything stays the same, 45 days to get a written comment from Columbine. If Lyft receives a commitment, then they develop and approve within the 6 months. And if Lyft does not receive the Columbine Square commitment within the time specified, then Lyft is to develop and present to council for approval within 9 months a plan, which is kind of option B. Using same, project, details, budget, financing, etc. Upon council approval again, the November 1st, 2020 would be the kickoff. All the math stays the same on that too. The big difference between these two is one of them is assuming Columbine will want to join in and play, and so that would be option A. What Mark and I kind of milled around was we need an option in case we feel compelled to ask them and they say no, we need to be able to kick it in. And so that's kind of where A1 comes in. Option B basically says, again, pay back $50,000, return the sales tax increment, hire an exec director, 60 days, and you do not wait for commitment from the owners of Columbine to use urban renewal, and you immediately go to considering other options within the urban renewal area, such as infrastructure improvements, which they have indicated they've got some ideas about that. Then Lyft is to develop and present to council for approval within 9 months. So this gives them the 9-month planning because they don't have to wait for the Columbine answer. So they've got 9 months to put together a plan. How are they going to use this? What will be the projects? What's the budget, financing, bonding? Because they can bond against what they have without having a partner on this. And neighborhood input again. And then council approval, same thing, November 1, 2020, and then all the numbers stay the same in terms of the math. So questions on any of those? Is there any?
Yeah, my biggest concern is I thought you gave them those directions already. And now we're giving them another 3 months, another 6 months, another 9 months. I'm afraid we're gonna be right back to where we are in 6 months from now, when Columbine Square doesn't return a single email or phone call from us. And we're putting all our chips into Columbine Square, and I don't think they're not gonna change their agenda because they're gonna get $200,000 or even $1 million. I don't think they're gonna change their agenda. Now, I did make the recommendation if we're gonna talk to Columbine Square, and if it's legal, I think what gets their attention is, hey, we wanna take this down to dirt and we're gonna use urban renewal to take it down to dirt and reseed this field and make it a field, and then we don't care about you. You let it stay this field as long as you want. I just hate to keep Columbine Square on the hook here, or even having them part of their conversation.
So that's option C.
It's option D.
What's that?
C, that would be C, because if you then, so you're saying you don't want Columbine involved,
I don't
but
want Columbine involved.
do you have any interest in the Urban Renewal Authority looking at other ways to do infrastructure improvements? And grass in that field is not an infrastructure improvement.
I thought last time we talked about that could be considered a option, but maybe I misunderstood that.
Well, it's not our property,
We could-
Right.
Karina.
I'm with Pat, we don't need to wait for Columbine Square and the property owner, they know this is out there, they know the process. So I'm not interested in A or A1 for that matter. I do still feel there's a place for TIF, I think this is a great opportunity. The purpose of urban renewal is that the funds that are raised in that area get back and invested back into that area. So to me, it's like a great example of, uber local. The incremental revenue came here, let's put it back here and let's make something good happen in our neighborhood. So I'm not interested in A, the process is known, it's been known. I say we move forward with option B, which essentially says, okay, Lyft, you still have a task to accomplish. Take a look at whether it's infrastructure and the reality is Columbine can come back and say, you know what, I wanna put grass, fine, you come back and put grass,
Yeah.
then we're having another conversation, but I'm not waiting for that. And I think we have so many infrastructure projects that we've just identified in our transportation master plan. We have crosswalks and things that we've been wanting to look at there. So I think there's still good use of funds that can get redirected in that neighborhood that can use it, honestly. So why disband an opportunity for them to be able to reinvest in that neighborhood that I really do feel deserves it?
So you're thinking they should bond against the money that they do have, because right now, $100,000 isn't gonna go very far, it's gonna do
Right,
2
right.
crosswalks.
And an approach we really should take here is just like a property owner would come to TIF and say, can you help us finance this? We as a city can go to the Lyft board and say, we have these 3 projects, whatever they may be, in that area of town, and we want to source some of that financing from urban renewal. So the city can actually act as a requester in that. So it's not that they alone need to come up with those projects. We probably know them better than they do. I mean, do you have a handful? Do you have some of the that we can?
Well, let's see, staff's had some conversation with the Lyft board here of late of, the possibility of projects. In fact, I brought a couple of documents here, one of which I'm sure the board started with was the Bellevue Avenue Corridor Vision. And so on page 15, there's a list of kind of action steps that talk about the possibility of gateways, medians, streetscape character, signage. So there's a kind of a list, and I'm sure the board probably started with that. I think, of course, now through our comprehensive planning process and our TMP, this was part of the piece we evaluated. So if you go to the TMP, which I have a copy of certain sections.
Copies today, didn't you?
If you remember, we have a project ranking list here of all the, kind of top priorities within the TMP. And sure, you go through that, they may be a little lower down the list, but yeah, there's things in here that reflect, very similar kinds of things. Some of it's bike lane stuff, some of it's pedestrian, the access control median, that's another example. It's in the vision, it's in the TMP. So yeah, I think there are kind of public infrastructure projects around that urban renewal area, certainly immediately adjacent as well.
I think it's helpful that we can give that would be, now, we as a city are given that direction because we just heard that from our community, right? We just did all this work. And so I think the projects are there, it's just letting them, giving them the go-ahead and the opportunity to execute on it by staying active.
Well, I just wanna, Carol's next, but just to clarify, what we would be doing is giving them till November of 2020 to show us how they would do this. What is that infrastructure stuff you would do? What does the money look like? What does the timeline look like? What partners do you have? What has the neighborhood said? So they'd have 9 months to bring back what they would do, and then council would say, yeah, do or don't. If the answer is don't and we want you to go away, you can make that decision then, or do and then make that decision then. Carol?
Rita, I have a question for you. A statement. There was discussion over the years that we couldn't do infrastructure improvements with this without there being an overall plan. I think that's the right word. Can we go ahead and do infrastructure type things without there being something else to go with it?
You can, it's within the actual urban renewal plan that allows them to do infrastructure improvements. I think the comment that you may be referring to is until you know exactly what a developer may be putting in there, you may be making improvements that may be ultimately getting torn out because they're not consistent with whatever the development is there.
That they can be done?
Yes.
Like a sidewalk.
Sure.
Kyle?
A1 seems like the best for me is, it leans more towards what Karina was saying with B, but it gives options for Columbine Square. It's never saying that they can't start with the other projects without Columbine Square ahead of time. But it just gives that option to say, hey, give one last question to Columbine Square. And 45 days is not a long time, so.
Carol?
I lost track of where we are on the various amounts of money. Are we talking about refunding or repaying the loan? Where is that in this discussion, and where is refunding the 3 URAs?
All of the options include a refund of the 3 URAs, and I think that's something that Reed has stated that needs to happen.
So
So
that
I think that we've gotta make that happen. Whether it is a portion of the loan or not the loan, these all have it as $50,000 because they're assuming there would be D doesn't have it in there as that, but because we would be assuming that Lyft would wanna hire an exec director and may need some legal advice and get kind of rolling with the plan to bring it in November, so they'd need some money. But we would, I think we started with a $50,000 mark because loan repayment, it's a third of the loan repaid back. That number could change if council wants that to look differently.
And I'll jump in and say, I think staff also believe that when the initial cooperation and loan agreement was established, it's when there were 4 urban renewal areas actually in effect. And so the fact that there's one, and for whatever good faith basis, good faith pledge to repay some of that money that was set aside specifically for, the loan specifically was really to start up with kind of marketing cost, staff fees, administration fees that Lyft was gonna incur by attending to all 4 of those urban renewal areas. So I think 50,000 was just a number that was come up with
The finances
to start
for
servicing that debt.
A1 and B are all the exact same. The only difference is the involvement of Columbine Square and the timeline.
The numbers are the same on all of them. And except for the 3 urban renewal, the refund of the $135,000, if council wants to, like I said, do something less or more than the $50,000, you can. If you wanna do, we have to be thoughtful about if we want to support the success of Lyft, then, we don't wanna hamstring them too much by not allowing them to have their own operating funds. So we've got Karina, Pat, you're kind of B-ish, Kyle's a 1A-ish.
I
Carol?
think Reed was going to say
Oh.
something.
I was just gonna say, they're going to have some debt in order to keep TIF. So the thought of them repaying the entire loan amount would mean that they have to give back all the TIF. They have no money to actually fund any projects.
So 10,000 is debt.
10,000 is debt. It gets into a question of, well, how much debt is debt for the purposes, how much debt do you need to have? I don't know if there's been any case law. There's nothing in the statute that talks about how much debt one needs to have in order to keep TIF.
So the answer would be yes in this case. There's no out there.
There's no out there, and consulting with another attorney who does urban renewal law as a profession, the statement was it has to pass the straight face test, I believe.
I'll be as
His
straight as I can
legalese.
about it.
Peggy, where are you at?
Well, I already said. I
Okay.
just wanna get
You're
rid
not
of
interested in considering any of
I mean, I'm not quite sure why we need to do this and put any money in when we have an economic development department and maybe we ought to beef them up more.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. What did you say, Peggy?
We already have an economic development department. Maybe we need to beef them up more. But we haven't seen anything come of this. You know, why keep pouring money into it?
Wait a minute. We have crosstalk going on here.
I just couldn't hear, that's what I was asking.
Oh, but you started to respond.
So I stopped.
That's okay. Does anybody else have anything?
Yes.
Carol?
I would like to stick with D, the same reason as Peggy, is we've been waiting a very long time to get something, and years have gone by. You gave them that's a pretty firm directive that we wanted to see something by this fall. And we really didn't get anything, and so I hope that they would even be able to get focused enough to get something to us, no matter how long we give them, I just don't, there's that saying, if you always do what you always have done, you'll always get what you've always gotten. So I don't see anything that's changing by our giving them more time. So we can expect to get more of this by giving them more time, this being nothing.
Jerry?
3 weeks ago, Kevin said that they thought he had a new contact, and it was with the management agent, Kairos, whoever it was.
Karis Redwood.
Anything happen from that? And that would be, to me, an indication of what, are they willing to talk to us or not? Dragging this thing out is just not that exciting to me anymore. If they came back and are talking today, that would tell me at least there's movement. 3 weeks ago, we thought we might have some movement. It doesn't look like it's happening.
A little context, I think that part of the reason that nothing has been done is largely because, and I think in hindsight, we all realize wrongly so, we were waiting for Columbine. There was an expectation that Columbine was going to redevelop. At one point, there was even a drawing, there was a developer, rep who had, I think, met with a couple of us. And there was stuff being moved around, there was interest, phone calls were being actively returned. There were visits here by the Redwood group. And so there was at some point, kind of an energy that perhaps this would move forward. I think Lyft has also gone through some growing pains and areas where they've spent some time doing some things that weren't as productive as maybe doing some other things, which is part of why we met with them in the spring. So, and at this point, I think that there's some agreement in terms of Columbine. I agree with Jerry that, enough is enough. I agree with Karina, enough is enough. I think if Columbine, if they did wanna come in and they wanna do a redevelopment, then good, redevelop it. They don't need our urban renewal to do it. And I'm not sure that it would be a very popular thing in the community for them to come in and utilize urban renewal for that. Which is why I do appreciate Lyft looking at beyond Columbine and saying that there are other infrastructure things. They have referenced the Bellevue Corridor Plan. They've referenced that they'd like to meet with Paul Bryant, who worked with them on the the Bellevue and come up with some things that they could do that would support some things in that area that are currently, we can't afford to do, aren't being done. And I think I really wanna give Lyft some credit on this because they really wanna see some success. They want to be able to show that Littleton can handle an urban renewal project and that we can show some success on this. And I think that there is success to be had. It's not a lot of money, even if they bond for the 20-year or what's left, 18 years or so. Less than that, even if they bond on that, it's a couple $1 million, but it's a couple $1 million that we don't have. It would be, the public improvements, it would be an opportunity, I think, to get the neighborhood to rally around. What are some of the things the neighborhood wants? What are some ideas? What could we do? And then actually watch this stuff come out of the ground and watch the city work with Lyft, work with the community. So I think there's a real good opportunity to have some real good things come out of this. What we're talking about tonight is essentially saying to Lyft, you get another year. And you get another year after you've paid back this amount of money, after you've paid back these URAs that need to be paid back. And you get another year based on this kind of tight timeline with these rigid restrictions, and you've got to hire an exec director who's gonna help you get this stuff done. If all of that fails in November 2020, then, I agree with Carol, you keep getting what you got when you keep doing what you're doing. But I think by cutting Columbine out of the whole picture, I think it just opens up a new world of opportunity, and I think that's something that the Lyft board would really like the opportunity for that, and I think the community would like to see that too. Pat?
What's the status of the members of the Lyft board? Are they all on board for another year, or do they have, I'll let my statistician over here figure that out real quick. Because I think that's a big piece of it. They have a good group of people.
Stability.
Yeah, stability is a big piece of it. They have a good group. They all want to work, as you said. And I can get behind what you just said, Debbie. I think, another year, let's, if that executive director is the end all to getting them moving, then let's move along with that. I would skip trying to reach out to Columbine anymore. I've left them 4 or 5 messages, Pete over there, no response. Columbine's Columbine, and I say let them go. There's other projects, other people that could potentially use this money.
And we did hear, when the Lyft board was here, we did hear from them that they felt that they were really unifying as a group. They were able to.
Yeah.
They were getting some work done. And I also appreciated what Cindy said about appreciating deadlines, which is part of why these plans are very, you've gotta hire someone within X amount of days, and this needs to happen, and this needs to happen, and I think, deadlines are really, keep everybody motivated, and I think that's what you have to do when you really wanna get something done, right, Mark? Look at that little
That's right.
deadline
One
chart over
deadline
there.
it is.
So, okay, so Karina, Pat, and Debbie would support Plan B. Jerry, where are you?
The intent of urban renewal is to develop. We're looking at ways to just do infrastructure around the property now, or near the property. We're not doing urban renewal. If all we're doing is just trying to do some infrastructural sidewalks or whatever it may be. I'm really gonna go to for full blast at this point, because unless Lyft can, before our 19th date, unless they can come to us and say, hey, look, here's what our budget is with the attorney. If we were to have a director, it's gonna cost this. Without having that information in front of me right now, I just can't go with it, because it's just more and more of the same. They're not promises, but it's just more and more speak. And again, urban renewal is for development, not to find a way to keep something alive that's not doing development. So right now I'm leaning on for it, and I will give them till the 19th.
So
That's it.
Go ahead, Judy.
I'll just add, so Lyft has approved a 2020 budget for Lyft. And they did include professional consulting and some attorney fees in the event that they were able to hire a consultant. So all in all, in 2020, their budget is $21,400 currently. And what that would do is allow an executive director for about 10 hours a month, which may or may not be enough, I don't know. But they do have that in their budget currently for 2020,
Okay, so the budget right now is about 21K.
yes.
So again, if we took it down to 25,000 as the debt that keeps them alive, afloat, I should say. They pay back everything up to 25 to the city. I could consider that on the 19th.
Karina?
I'll ask Reed to clarify the definition of urban renewal and what the intent is. So if the intent is to, eliminate blight, and some ways that can happen is through development, through infrastructure. I mean, that's why infrastructure is part of that. So I just wanna make sure we're clear of what the intent of urban renewal really is by definition.
Yeah, well, when council found that this particular area was blighted, there were a number of different factors that go into the determination that it's blight. So remediating certain things, such as dilapidation of buildings, certainly sidewalks could be part of the actual remediation of blight. So that is a factor.
I believe there was drainage issues here as well, like, as far as, I mean, there were a number of things, so, that's why I think infrastructure becomes a part of
Right, but I
it. I
think
just wanted that clarity, that it wasn't just about developing something.
not developing anything in particular, but I would say kind of the general purpose behind urban renewal is to remediate those areas that are affected by blight, and we use that term so broadly, with the purpose being the betterment of public health, public safety, increasing the economy in that particular area to benefit the region as a whole.
Kyle?
I'm fine with B, it's,
Okay. So, I think at this point, we've got 4 who are supporting Plan B, 2 that are solidly on D. And Jerry has some concerns about the money, and would be most interested in trying to leave their bank account at about 25K.
Mhm.
Okay,
That's a lifeline is all it is.
yeah,
are you saying leave their bank account 25K or
The-
leave
the
the
debt.
loan amount?
The debt.
That's different.
leave the debt at 25K. Tiffany, what would that be, their total, the 3 URAs get paid back and all the loan except for 25K, what would be their cash balance? Carol? Do you have a question?
Isn't there something about having to return the sales tax increment?
That's in there.
Let's return it.
That's the
That's the
$135,000.
And that's what we're changing.
No,
That's
it's not
what
what
they're
we're-
paying back.
We're changing the due date.
that's
Not on
that's
that.
different.
That's totally different.
Some amount will change. What
The $135,000, that's the
Sales tax
refund from the
Well, that's happening
URAs.
anyway. That's happening all of them.
No, that
It's
didn't
happening.
happen, that didn't happen, it was supposed to happen, it never happened.
No, the plans says that it will happen.
Yes.
We're putting that in here and saying that that they have to do it, it hasn't happened. It's been an oversight.
Understand, all 4 plans say that it will be paid back.
Yes.
Correct.
All 4 options.
Mhm.
Option A, 1,
Oh,
yes,
yeah,
we're including
yeah,
the
the-
sales tax increment,
yeah,
that is yes, the 135,000, yes, to pay that back.
But not the Columbine increment.
Right.
Right.
So the
Other three.
so the repayment would be 134 for all of the sales, sales tax increment from the 3 urban renewal area, so 134 would be
35.
returned back to the city, as well as 50,000, which is a partial repayment of the loan. So in total, they would be repaying or giving back to the city $185,000 is
All-
what.
All but the 25 is what I'm saying.
So
Yeah,
you're saying
so
more
what
than
would it be
more than
if it
85
was?
is there now.
So that would leave them with 167,000 roughly.
Okay.
So they would, Jerry
To be
is.
clear, 167,000, so to be clear, what that means, they would pay back
29,000 alone.
29,000 in the loan, leaving a debt of 25,000 to us, to the city, to the citizens. They would pay back the increment, which is gonna just happen with the URAs, 135. Their remaining balance would be 167, which would get them through getting a executive director and then some legal, and then they would have some additional.
They're still gonna have funds coming in.
Correct, Karina?
Can I make a recommendation? I know that we're kind of throwing out some numbers and I know there's a tentative budget, but I'd like to see maybe a recommendation come back from staff, as you said here. There's gonna be a revision to this outstanding loan. And maybe instead of saying it's a full repayment of 75, or whatever the number is maybe we put them on like a repayment plan that on a quarterly basis or on a monthly basis, X amount. So I'd like to see a recommendation come back from staff of maybe start with the assumption that 50,000 is due now, but with a payment plan over the next year so that they can work through, one, really determine what an executive director, cause they probably haven't done that yet. Given this new direction that we're giving them, what kind of executive director do they need? How much time? So there's probably some reworking of their budget that they would need to do at this point. So
Did you say it
I'd
was
be
an
open
approved
to a
budget?
repayment plan.
It is, but we did it because of statutes, they have to have an approved budget by a certain amount of time. And they know and they're anticipating direction from council, so they will definitely be amending it at some point, depending on what the direction is from council.
Just maybe a comment to what you're suggesting, Karina. Council has to act next week on the loan. So if staff's gonna be recommending some kind of a repayment, we really need to discuss that this evening. So if there's interest on the part of council for some kind of a repayment schedule, then you're gonna have to talk about at what point in time do you want that all paid back? Is it in November of next year? Is it June? Whatever that might be. Then I think that just makes it easier for staff then to decide, well, that some schedule here, maybe it's monthly, maybe it's quarterly, depending on your end date. So I would need to know an end date in order to have any success for the council action next week.
Kyle?
Yeah, I was gonna suggest what Karina suggested, is have the end date be whatever the November 2020. Assuming they get something going, they'll have bonded and that'll be more debt and they don't have to owe the city debt. If they don't get something going, they won't have bonding. If it's all come due to the city at the end of 2020, then it's done.
And if they go for bonds, they're gonna have to get bond counsel, they're gonna have to get financial advisors, so
they-
that's gonna add to the cost, just.
We don't wanna give them the go-ahead to, okay, do something and then put them in a situation where we're kind of not equipping them to be
Right.
successful. And I don't think that does anyone.
So if we have a small amount due at the end of this year and then a small amount due quarterly up until it's all due at the end of next year.
They're gonna pay half this year and half
Next
Well, if you
November
pay
2020.
half, it takes away how much they can bond too. If you do the $50,000 and another $50,000.
$75,000.
How does the bonding work? How would that work?
It's the tax increment that they would
So
be
they're
bonding,
bonding
not the
against
balance of the
Okay,
budget.
okay.
Yeah.
Jerry?
Yeah.
I was gonna say, I still would wanna take it down to the 25 debt. And then if they come back to us with a plan that says, hey, if we only had this, we can always, as a council, give them a loan, increase the loan. I'd rather have that option to increase them instead of having them having the option to pay us back.
I very much agree with that. That's what I was thinking when I was.
Oh, jeez.
So Carol, you're looking at the 25?
I would like to
Maybe
stay
25?
with the 25. I think
The lifeline, yeah.
we're being generous in not requiring them to pay back all what's due. And then if they prove along the way that they do have something going and need money, then we can consider it. But just to leave the money laying there, I think delivers a message that we're not serious about wanting it back. And I, in the spirit of being good business people, I think we need to get the loan back.
And that would, Karina, I think that would give them a chance to look at that list that you were talking about of what could be done. If they came back and said, here's what it would take to do that, then we can consider it at that point.
No, I'm not in favor of the 25,000. I am in favor of being serious about that the loan is due back and that we expect something on that. I would support going half, which is 75,000, and then the other half would be mandated in November of 2020, which means you either can afford to pay us back, or if you can't, you have no debt, then you're closed. So I think that is motivation, but I also think it still gives them, because, you know, it shows that we are not trying to force them into failure. And, you know, it's $75,000, and while I appreciate the fact that all the citizens' dollars are important, it's not hundreds and thousands of dollars. We are getting the increment back, which I think is really important, and I don't know that they really planned on that coming back. So that's money that will be removed from their account. So I would support 2.5. Do we have
I'm good with that.
Half
I was
million
okay
numbers.
with the-
Half million
Fair,
numbers.
75,000?
it's still a
75,000,
accomplishment.
and then the condition is that on November, we would write it in here on November 20th, November 2020, whatever that date, magic date in November will be, is that's when the rest is due. So if you don't have debt,
Yeah, I'd like to see the city come back with something so I can actually read it and consider it.
well, they'll have to write the,
Yeah.
they'll have to write the
Yeah,
resolution.
I mean, I can't say, yeah, I'd go for that until I actually read it, digest it.
Well, we just need to have a consensus of, you know, that we
Wanna read it and
ask
digest
staff
it.
to do that work, so. Mark, are you clear?
I am,
Okay.
Mr. Claire, let me just summarize.
Okay,
So we are returning the $134,998 from the previous 3 URAs, that's the sales tax increment. And the council is interested in taking half of the loan, or in essence, leaving $75,000 with Lyft. The rest of it would be repaid back to the city. We would be requiring that an executive director would be hired within the timeframe specified, and then the plan dates as noted.
And
and this is without Columbine.
Yeah, without Columbine.
And the 75,000 that they are repaying us, that's on a, you're gonna put that like on a scheduled payment plan, is that how that works?
I would,
No,
I want a check right now, they have it in the bank.
Yeah, we
we're talking
have-
about the remaining 75.
Yeah, the board has to get together.
The initial 75 that's due, is that, would be that be due now, or is that like over a period up until
We know.
November?
End of the year.
Do whenever
Yeah,
the December
Yeah,
19th.
it would just
Right.
be,
Loan.
December 19th is the day.
yes,
I
so
think it would be
Oh,
due that
to
day.
meet that date, got it.
Yeah.
so the Lyft board would need to amend their 2019 budget in order to do that by the end of December. So that would be possible as long as there is a meeting in
Yeah, we
December.
definitely do that, but yeah, I'm sure we can manage that with them.
Okay, okay, so, I think that
I'm clear.
you've got it clear, okay,
Can
very good.
can I ask one clarifying question too?
Mhm.
One of the recommendations that we had was to extend the amount of time for future repayment of sales tax increment. It's very difficult for Lyft to be held to returning that money to the city at the end of the first quarter of the following fiscal year. It doesn't really give them enough time to utilize that money in an effective way. And so one of the recommendations is if we redo the loan agreement is to extend the amount of time that they have. So I'm just looking for direction on that issue as
That
well.
was part of our recommendation.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I think that sounds fair, does everybody think that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're mandating that they hire an executive director within 60 days. So given that they have to rework their budgets, we're kind of saying, we're taking money away, but you still have to hire someone in 60 days. They may determine they want to push out the hire date so that they have more money to use. I just don't know if we have to be that directive there.
I feel like we do. I feel like,
Well, they said they needed.
Yeah.
And there's enough money there.
They need
to
one
hire
bad, and
director.
they've had enough money to bring someone in, and it wouldn't be a hire, it would be a contract consultant
So
thing.
they could use as much or
They
as
could go
little.
month by month or something.
Yeah.
Sure.
It
And
was-
I think if Lyft needs to hold a couple special meetings over the next couple weeks or whatever they need to do to get it done, then we know what that's like, you
When
know?
does the 60 days kick in? Is it over the holidays? I'm just sensitive
I
to.
would-
It's in January.
Oh, okay, so it'll start in
January.
January. Okay, that makes
And we can
sense.
certainly assist them in trying to recruit for that too, by the way.
So it'd be like January 19th, cause this would be
It would have to happen.
ratified. Well, we would vote on this on the 19th. And then it's a resolution, so is it
7 days.
immediately or, cause ordinances take
7 days.
Depends on
7
where it's
days.
written,
I think it's, what is it, there's like 6 days after the formal action of a resolution there. Or maybe, I have to look at that with Reed
So
here.
that's kind of
We
when
can
our
be
law
very
would start.
specific with Lyft about the.
So that gets them into January through the holidays.
Yeah,
And
Yeah, I'm just sensitive to the holidays and,
Sure.
you know,
Sure.
that's what.
That takes us to January, but I'm also, I don't wanna go without noticing that this still is, it takes part of our city attorney, part of our accounting department, part of office supplies we're providing copies, we're providing distribution of documents. This is taking city staff time. And I know often we've heard it's minimal, but it does take city staff time, so it isn't just cost free.
Okay. Right, next item. Our next item is, oh, this sounds like fun. Tiffany, you,
Our finance director did a very extensive, long PowerPoint presentation.
and our investment policy updates.
So exciting, exciting.
So I'll just get my 67 slide presentation ready.
Yay, there was only 4 in there, I'm sure.
Actually, I don't have a PowerPoint tonight, so.
Came for Lyft.
There's a
That's right.
If you could just explain to us why you're bringing this to us, and I think we just stay at the high level on this.
Absolutely. So
That
the
one,
city, I'll do my best. The city has the city has an investment policy. The original investment policy was adopted in 2008. It was amended in 2013. It hasn't been amended since then. We all are very well aware market changes in the last probably 5 to 10 to 15 years even. And one of the things that actually came out of the audit is we're over in one area on the percentage of investments in a particular security, but in total we weren't. So one of the recommendations from the auditors was, why don't you go back and look at your investment policy, maybe you need to tweak it. We're fighting for every basis point right now in the market and we have been for years. And so really broadening the ability for us to invest more into a certain type of security will help us get better investment earnings for the city. And so it looks like a lot of adjustments were made and amendments were made to the policy. But I just wanted to kind of just touch on a couple of the highlighted areas. One in particular is historically, we don't buy and sell investments. But there are opportunities for us to maybe trade an investment that we currently have, sell it, buy a better one that has a better rate that might meet our ladder that we need for the city for cash flows. And so we just wanted to explicitly allow that in our policy. It's not stated currently, but we wanted to add that in there. And then the other thing is we wanted to add a couple of charts. We wanted to show what the ratings are for Moody's and S&P. And then the other chart that we added was to show you what our limits are on the percentage of investments based on the type of investment. That is kind of sporadic throughout the investment policy, so we wanted to put it all together in a chart so it's easily accessible and you can read and understand what percentages we're doing. The other thing that we did want to include is the ability to invest in COPs. It wasn't explicitly stated, but we want to state that because Colorado is very notorious for having certificates of participation. We've issued them. We want other cities to invest, so why can't we invest in others? And I think we should. They have really good rates, so I think that just explicitly stating that. And then the other one thing that we did expand is corporate debt. So the ability to invest in Walmart, Exxon, some of those larger corporations, up to 5 years, which is our total limit. We're currently at 3. It gets a little complicated and confusing when we're trying to fill our ladder and we're looking at investments from our brokers. And we really like a 5-year, but we can't invest in it because our policy limits us to 3.
Amazon's a better example than Walmart.
Thank you.
Yes.
Sorry,
Please.
that's just the one that comes to mind.
Yikes.
Johnson & Johnson, that's a good one. So just expanding the time that we can invest in that. But I will state, we do not invest in anything greater than 5 years, just in general in anything that we invest in.
I have but one question then on the whole thing. I'm okay with all of it, except when I went through the policy, I didn't see anything that said that how often we'll revise, because we did it in 2008,
Right,
in 2013.
that's a great
But I
question.
didn't see anything that actually has a date that we'll do it every 12 months or something.
So at the end of the policy, we do say that the finance director will review it annually and that make any recommendations to council. It was suggested that we add that council review it periodically as well, not just the finance director. So, we're certainly open to adding, every 3 years, every 5 years, I
Maybe
think.
work with an advisor or
Arlene.
Yeah, so one of the things that is in the 2020 budget that we talked to council about and it was a policy question or a highlight was we wanna go out for an RFP to get an investment advisor for the city to manage our funds. We're doing it in-house and like I said, we're fighting for every basis point on any investment that we're looking at. And I think an investment advisor would really have more time to do that and be strategic for the city and get us a better return. So we're definitely, that's in our 2020 budget, we're working on.
how much money is it that we're investing at any point in time?
Currently it's about 56 million, I believe,
We're
that
at
we
61
invest.
right now.
Needed advice
It's real money.
for that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong, we have gotten great returns on our investments over the years, but I think they have the capacity, the ability, and I think they could really do good for the
Do you
city.
two carry your Series 7 license and those types of things, obviously?
No, we
You
don't,
Oh,
no.
so how
We
come?
have brokers that we work with and we have advisors that help us along the way, but
Yeah, if, just adding my perspective to this, I think it's time that we do the RFP and find somebody who can really kind of manage these. Make no mistake, even with the modifications of this policy, we're very conservative about all this.
yes.
So there's a lot of regulation kind of imposed on us here to make sure we're conservative, so I just want to emphasize that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, our ratings are really high, AAA, AA,
Yes.
no Bs, no junk bonds,
Nothing.
nothing of that nature. The market has changed a little bit over the years, there's not as many AAAs out there anymore. So it gets really harder to get some good earnings for the city.
Right, and I think as Jerry said, like, this is something you have to continuously monitor your not just the decision that you're making at one point in time, but constantly monitor the market and say, should we change our policy? And you guys have a lot of other things you're working on, so it's not something that you're gonna have the capacity to do.
Tiffany, are you comfortable with the verbiage under the policy revisions then in terms of Jerry's question? Or do you want it defined at council, more defined?
To review it,
Mhm.
if that's council's direction, absolutely, we can add a review by council every 5 years if you'd like. I don't have any issues with that.
Call me naive, but I did not realize we had those types of funds and investments out there. And this is the first time I've ever heard it.
Me too.
Mainly probably Carol and I are shaking our heads, and Karina, maybe you knew, but so when we look at the budget for the city, I mean, we take in those earnings and we apply that put those in the general funds, or is that sitting out there like any other fund where we don't touch that money because we'll get taxed on it?
So think of it as cash, just liquid cash, making payroll, paying our bills.
Right.
We have different funds, but all of them hold cash. The sewer fund has 30 million in cash, general fund has 12 million, whatever the number is exactly. It's there, and so we invest
Sure.
all of
Yeah,
that
you don't want to sit
together.
there
You're like
right.
sweeping it into
We do,
investments.
yeah, we have a
Yeah.
pooled cash is what we call it. All of it stays in a certain account and then we purchase investments in
Okay.
That's
It's not
as a
just sitting in
whole,
a checking
yeah.
account,
And
so
the
it's not just
interest
sitting in a
is-
checking account.
Yeah, the interest is divvied up every month according to the cash balance for each separate fund. So like sewer gets some of it, storm gets some, the general fund gets some, so
Okay.
it's split up.
So it's not just sitting in a checking account making
No,
0.04%,
yeah.
you know. That's why we buy
You didn't put it in a
investments.
cute little savings account
Right,
somewhere,
yeah, yeah, but we have to be strategic, you know, we
Sure,
wanna
no
make sure we
question,
get the
I
best
get that,
return,
yeah.
we're investing in securities that are rated high. You know, liquidity, we need to make our payroll, and so we know our cash flow at the city at any given point of the month. We know when big money, you know, large amounts come in and when we have to pay off debt, make debt payments, so we really monitor that weekly, daily.
I was gonna say, to a level you probably don't really wanna know.
Yeah, Peggy.
So I think it would be good to have an update to council every 2 years following the election, because you potentially could get a significant turnover, but you might at least have 2 or 3 new people every 2 years. So it just is, it's so that people do know.
I would just, maybe you just say odd years,
Odd years, yeah, we could do that.
so that it's clear.
Great.
Okay, okay, so that'll come to us next week, and that revision will be in there, and then all of the other red lines in here, if anybody has any issues with any of those, okay. So that would be the only revision.
We just say make it even years, not odd years, so
Yeah,
it's
even
not-
year, yeah, that's what we were
Yeah.
just talking about.
Okay.
Yeah, odd year.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, all right. That it for you? Okay, Mark?
I just have one item here. In the council's tentative calendar, you saw that there was, for next week, a motion here to appoint somebody to the South Metro Fire Authority Board. And it's a very unusual kind of circumstance we're in. If you remember, they have redistricted, they're going to a vote in May, so it's kind of a very temporary assignment, and we need continuity with an existing council member. And so I'm suggesting it's on the agenda for next week. I know that the mayor here has talked with Pat Driscoll, and this is a very temporary assignment, but he has agreed. And if the council's okay with this, it's just to allow him to kind of, after the mayor, of course, is term limited, to kind of fulfill that couple of meetings here before the election in May of next year.
And the reason we need to do this now is because the last meeting we'll have, and the last meeting council will have, regular meeting, before the next South Metro meeting is on the 19th. And the next meeting South Metro has is their budget meeting, so we need to have somebody there for that, and they need to be at the table, and they need to have a vote. So that's why it's important, the service would be, I don't even know if you would serve on the May meeting, with the election, I don't know, that would be determined, but it would be those 6 months in there.
And then there's an election that appoints somebody at that point.
Yeah, it's
No,
a
you elect.
A general election across the district, and then after
It's
that,
done by the citizens, not the council.
Correct.
Right,
by the citizens.
and that'll be the first time we have done that in this.
Correct.
Yeah,
And then at that point, then the fire authority board then dissolves, because now the district has reformed.
and it'll be an election similar to the way South Suburban elects their board, it's gonna be in May, it's gonna be, and Littleton, we can send out the map, have we not sent the map?
I can't
The
remember if
district.
Yeah, you shared.
I think I did
Okay.
share that, but I can certainly.
Littleton gets, we're fully covered except for a little bit of along county line on the Douglas County side, and then I think Trailmark is out. But overall, the entire city with some fringe around the edge is covered by one rep, so that will be good. That will be good, so hopefully that person will come out of Littleton and be the rep for that, so. Okay, so everybody's okay with that, cause they need to have somebody who council blesses. Okay, anything else?
I saw on the tentative schedule, there's an orientation the 20th and 21st.
Correct.
That's for new council, I assume.
Actually,
Probably should go too.
I probably should. I love the idea, I told whoever I was talking to, I love the idea, I wish I would have had it. But now that I'm an old veteran, you know.
Yeah, actually, I'll invite all the council, but it's obviously geared towards the new council members themselves. And if you remember 2 years ago, we had kind of a notebook departments were listed, org charts,
right. Oh,
some
yeah,
real
sure.
basic information.
Nice.
But it's,
Yeah, now I remember.
Refresher.
In fact, I didn't remember.
yeah, I've already sent an email to them, I'm trying not to overwhelm them too much, but you know, there's, you
Just
can
minor
appreciate.
overwhelming, not lots of.
Yeah, so, yeah, the process begins here, but
Was it 2
again,
days?
welcome to attend.
Was it 2 or 3 days?
Three.
Three nights.
21st and
Yeah.
25th.
I'll send an agenda to everybody so you can kind of see what's
And
up.
we got a big shindig tomorrow night.
Indeed.
You ready?
Yep.
Can we show up?
Yeah.
Don't pull Doug on us.
And then
Can you
we have
read-
our
read
regular
Greece in
meeting,
for us?
and just so you guys know, let's just refresh real quick, so on the 19th, what happens is this council starts the meeting, we do have business, obviously, this will come through, we do have business to do, so we'll have, some of this will be on consent, some of it, and I'll talk to Mark about, it may show up on, well, the resolution.
Yes, correct.
Okay, and then, so we'll go through our regular meeting. The charter says we have to, like, we turn into pumpkins at 8 o'clock, so we have to be done serving as this current council by then. I don't see a problem with that, I think it'll be a really quick meeting, cause we just have a couple of issues and, council report should be very minimal. And then I think I just kind of stop the meeting,
You have to turn
as
it over.
opposed to an official adjournment or something, I don't know that, I gotta figure that out, Wendy's gonna help me with that. And then Wendy comes in and she presides over the next part of the meeting, which is then the new council members become sworn in by the judge. So the exiting council members leave the dais and
Take your stuff
we're
with
kicked
you.
to the curb. And then the new council members get sworn in at the dais after they're each is sworn in, and then they go to in the pit, they go to the dais and pick a seat and sit down. And then they do the election of mayor and then the election of mayor pro tem. And then there should be no other business on their agenda, and then that would be adjourned and then it's over. And then that council then, I think that the next meeting is a study session that is being canceled, or
Yeah, it was the Tuesday of Thanksgiving week, I didn't really have anything scheduled
Yeah,
anyways.
it's not a good week.
Plus I had the orientation that Monday, so
Yeah.
I just,
So their first regular meeting will be December 2nd.
yes.
And they'll have a rezone on the 19th. Y'all will have a rezone on the 19th.
Yes, so Reed and I are.
So it's gonna be, it's
Yeah, we
gonna
got
be.
a lot to cover with the new council.
Yes, you do.
Eating
Any
popcorn
questions?
and drinking wine.
Yeah.
Well, don't you do that
That's
anyway?
exactly what I'll do.
Is there a reception before the meeting?
Yes, the 6 o'clock for incoming and outgoing in this room. So, any questions or
In the past, wasn't it afterwards?
no, before?
Yeah, cause it.
Well, there's
I remember things
cake left afterwards.
that- Yeah, I always
Okay,
thought it was afterwards, but okay, cool, it's before.
Okay, we're adjourned.
Alright.